It's Tom here from ProWritingAid. Delighted to have you along. Thanks for joining us for another webinar. Sally Orson-Jones, also known professionally as Sally OJ, is a literary editor and a writer's mentor based here in Brighton in the UK. Sally started her career at the BBC. She worked for many years in the music business, working for bands, record companies and MTV. During this time, Sally was one of the first readers of Sarah Waters' then unpublished novel, Tipping the Velvet, And Sally has gone on to collaborate with Sarah on all of her books. It's a relationship which continues to this day. And since becoming a book doctor in 1998, Sally has worked with authors ranging from absolute beginners at one end of the spectrum to Viv Albertine on both of her successful autobiographies at the other. Sally loves them all. Welcome, Sally. It's great to have you with us.
Lovely to be here.
Great. Sally, we're going to get straight into it as we're a few minutes late. And I know at 8 o'clock, which is in 50 minutes time in the UK, we want to be out on the streets. We have a clap for the healthcare and all other key workers in these difficult times. But Sally, on your site, sallyoj.com, it says you're a book doctor. So let's start there. Tell us what a book doctor is.
Well, it's not a term I coined, obviously. It's been around for a while. Sarah used to call me her book doctor. It's somebody who's a bit, I think of it as somebody who's more holistic than an editor. So I'm not just reading for grammar, obviously, or for things like that. I'm also reading for plot characterization, all of those things. But also I form a relationship with my authors, and there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of brainstorming. So to me, it's a very three-dimensional, very holistic thing. I don't know if that's necessarily what other people would say, but that's what I am. I am your doctor, your book doctor.
And when did you... So when did you, what made you realise that it was your thing? So previously you've said to me in previous conversations, we're all walking around with a hidden talent, right? When did you realise this was yours?
When Sarah, who I knew vaguely, socially, not very well, started to write Tipping the Velvet, which I don't think was called anything at that time. She told me that she was writing a book, and I was very enthusiastic. Which, oddly enough, I'm not sure how many people were. I think people thought it was a bit reckless. And subsequently, when she'd written a little bit, she asked me if I'd like to have a look at it. And I remember very, very clearly reading the first pages of Tipping the Velvet, which were pretty much the same as they are now. And obviously being completely astounded. And we started meeting up every few weeks. She'd give me a few more pages. It was a very informal relationship, obviously, at this point. I was still working in the music business. But what I started to do was I'd say, I absolutely love this bit. But, there was this guy who came in at the beginning of this chapter. Where's he gone now? And, I really like this bit and I really like this bit. But it didn't really work how you got from one to the other. And, are you absolutely sure that they had iPads in 1865? Not that she actually done that, but this kind of thing. And she was saying to me, nobody else, she had a few other people, I think, reading, 2 or 3 other people. And she said, nobody else has noticed any of this. And I said, okay. Well, I was just very, very surprised because it was really obvious to me. So in the process of working on Tipping the Velvet, Sarah obviously discovered that she could write extremely good books. And I discovered that I could edit them, and not just edit them, but, go really deep tissue with them. And I would never have known that. I would never have known that about myself. I'd have still be writing features on Girls Aloud or something.
And that's the difference, right? Because it is different from editing. You make a big thing about the kind of relationship you have with writers and how much, I suppose, time and energy and passion you devote to each project. So there is a difference. But where do you sit with that kind of editor, agent, publisher relationship and chain as a book doctor?
Firstly, I do edit. I do
Right.
good old-fashioned editing at the same time. As when I read a manuscript, I do the whole lot. So as I read, I pick up on everything, I hope, including, you know, a misused apostrophe or you know, grammatical errors or whatever, but that's not really my passion. But I do that. I'm in a cul-de-sac all on my own in some ways. Obviously, I have a relationship with some agents and with some publishers. I've been in the business a long time now, but it's not really, my job is to get any manuscript I get. What I want to do is to get it in the best possible health it can be. And I will go do whatever I can to make that happen. And then once it's as good as it can be, and the author and I, sorry about the traffic, the author and I agree on that, then if I can think of an agent that might like the book, I will say, you know, why don't you try this agent? But I tend to keep out of that process. It's something that really is for the author to do, to build those relationships.
Okay, I've got some more questions about the work with Sarah, because it does. I mean, it's fascinating, and but I'd quite like to get into process actually, because you touched on it there, and I love a quote you've used again with me before, and I don't know if this is from someone else but it was about you talked about the hell of writing, where the highs are rare and the lows are consistent. And I wondered, I'm sure we've got lots of people listening today who are curious to know kind of at what point most writers come to you for help.
That differs very much, but I ideally will want to see a finished draft. I don't always. Sometimes I look at 3 chapters. Writing is very, very hard, and I don't actually want to make light of it, because it's real pain and suffering, and what I do want to say though is I have never worked with any author, and if you think of the authors you've just mentioned, who haven't said to me, I'm never doing this again, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to get a job as a deck chair attendant, I can't bear doing this. It's absolutely standard. It's got nothing to do with how good you are. It's got nothing to do with how successful you are. Writing is just hard. Yeah. And then there are days which are fantastic and wonderful, and they make all the rest of it worth it.
Yeah.
But that's okay, and that's part of my job, is to be reassuring and to find out the bit that's been problematic on this particular day, and to dig down into that and to try and work out a solution. Okay,
and maybe you can talk to us a little bit about when a writer comes to you, what's the process you follow to diagnose the problems with a manuscript, with a book? How does the process begin, Sally?
It does tend to be different with everyone, obviously, but usually someone will find me somehow and we'll have a conversation, because really, with me anyway, it's such an intimate relationship. It's almost like finding a psychiatrist or a therapist or something. So we have to know we're going to gel and get on, and actually we usually do. Very, very rarely. On the very rare occasions I don't, I will recommend them to a very good colleague. So chemistry is
important then.
Chemistry is important because it's a very lovely intense relationship. So I get the manuscript and I will read it, and I will read it sometimes 2 or 3 times. It's one of the reasons it takes me a long time. If they've gone for my premium option on my website, I will mark up the manuscript, which I don't have to do. People don't get a lesser deal if I don't, but it is pleasurable, I think, to have not only me saying, this doesn't work, you've done something wrong here, but that was brilliant, that was really good, wow, that was great, oops, you've said that twice. So if you get a marked up manuscript, you get basically my thoughts, as I was reading it. As I read, I make notes, and eventually I will turn those notes into a report. And the report is somewhere usually between 20 to 30 pages long, which sounds horrific. I do make a huge effort to make it, you've seen one of my reports, I do make them very accessible, very readable. And the reason they're so long is because I usually pull out, they're not generic. So I usually pull out examples. It's no good just saying to somebody, you're doing this wrong. That's not going to help anyway. So I'm going to say, you know, this isn't quite working. Look, you've done it here on page 58. You've done it here on page 110. You've done it here on page 300. And then, so I pull out those examples, and then I write about how to address the issue. But even that is, if somebody gets a 30-page report, that's way too much. You get a 30-page report and a marked up manuscript, and then you're going to want to lie down for a week. So what I do is I meet, usually face-to-face, ideally with the client, and we have a meeting 3 or 4 hours. We talk it through, and that makes it all a lot less scary. And that's also a great time for brainstorming, for discussing any issues, for finding out new ideas. That's my favorite bit, when we say this isn't working. Oh, what will work? I absolutely love that bit. And of course I can do that by Zoom or by Skype as well. And so it's a long process, but it's a very, very rewarding process. Yeah,
and I can imagine. And but the sense I get is very much one of collaboration, and I guess that's that then sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. And I mean, typically, how long are you working with one of your clients during the process? Could this go on for months, for weeks, for years?
Oh, it can go on for years. I mean, you know, sometimes people come back to me with other books. That's always wonderful. Usually people will come back to me. I can't remember with anyone signing off the first draft I see. Never. Even if they've done 6 drafts already. So I usually see another draft, and that's always very exciting. And part of my deal is that I give a certain amount of email support or phone support as well. Not loads, but a little bit. If you're stuck and just want to shoot me an email, what did you mean by this? Or so it's a never-ending relationship, really.
And do you, I mean, how quickly do you get a sense of what's not working, where the gaps are? Is there a kind of, is there a bit of intuition there, or?
It's a bit of everything, I think, and it's really interesting because I've lost count of the number of times I've started to read a book and I thought, oh no, this is going to be tough, and then 3 or 4 chapters in, I've completely forgotten that I thought that. I'm completely engrossed. It's great. Of course, it can work the other way around. Yeah. Sometimes there's one section in particular that's not great. You just have to. So what I've learned is to not make any judgments. I try not to think, oh no, anymore if I start, or even, oh my God, this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it unfolds, and as it does, you know, I make the notes. So if there's one problem, which is characterization, you know, everything else is great. We can sort of focus on that. If there are several different problems, that's okay. We can focus on all those things, and they're usually tied together. So there's usually we find the one thing that will help solve all those problems, and it's very, very exciting, and causes the reader to. She said this in public, so I can say I did make Sarah cry once.
In a good way?
No, with despair. Not intentionally. I was very upset as well when she did, but you know, but then. You know, I won't tell you which book, but an absolutely fantastic book came, and not just because of me, of course. But sometimes, you know, it's hard for an author sometimes to hear this stuff, but my job is to make it better. So I usually say, we're going to start this conversation like this, then you're going to go right down, and then you're going to come up, and then you're going to hate me, and then everything's going to be fine. That's what usually happens. And not the hate.
I remember you saying to me that you do I think you do make it more painful for a while.
Well, I'm very, it's no point in doing it if you're not honest, and you can be kind and honest. And I always try to be kind, because it's somebody's baby. It's somebody's life and soul you're talking about. You know, it's no just good just saying this is no good. And anyway, I've never had a manuscript that's absolutely no good. There's always some good in there. And that's what you have to focus on.
So we've talked about this because of where kind of ProWritingAid fits relationship with editors and book doctors, and getting that first draft into a great shape. What's the kind of obviously we have a whole range of writers listening in tonight, but what's your advice to new writers, or those that are working on their first or second novel? What can what would you suggest in terms of making sure that first draft?
The absolute best advice that I can give anyone ever, and your writers will have heard this before, is read your work back to yourself out loud. Every chapter, every page, every paragraph, read it back out loud to yourself, and you will be staggered at what you see, at what you stumble over, what doesn't work. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, do not be discouraged. Most published books will have gone through, the classics will have gone through 7, 8, 9 drafts. That's almost standard. So do not be discouraged. The fact that it's very hard is not discouraging. If you're writing and it's very easy, don't worry about that either. Sometimes you've been carrying a story around with you for years. That'll just pour out. That'll just pour out onto the page, but then it will need working and refining, because sometimes something that you've been carrying around for years works in your head, it won't work so well on the page.
And is that the same for...
Read it out first.
Yeah, okay, that's really, really interesting. Is that the same for... the Sarah Waters of the world? Do they find that some of them, one or two of the stories fall out their heads, and others are much harder work? I'm assuming it's exactly the same.
I don't want to, I must make it clear that with Sarah, it's not just me. There's a lot of people that Sarah works with. I don't want to make it sound like it's me and Sarah battling the world. So I don't want to talk about her in particular. And now I've forgotten your question. What was it?
Well, it was just, Sally, I suppose, let me rephrase.
Did they all go through that process? Did you say?
I guess, well, the more experience you become as a writer, that those challenges remain, right?
The challenges remain. And I remember what you said now. You said, does it sometimes, yes, some of the books just come, and some of the books are blood, sweat and tears. Yeah. Really, really difficult. And that doesn't matter how good you are. Yes, but some of them do just out they come, and need very little polishing, actually. Yeah. But that's going to be, don't expect that with your first book. It's not that it never happens. Have realistic expectations of your first book. You're learning your craft. You're learning how to write. You're learning how to structure a book. You're learning how to invent characters. You're learning how to make a story arc. You're learning how to build this thing. Yeah. And it's very, very hard. And it's not that a lot of people, if you sit down and you write a book, you're winning. If you've managed to write a book from beginning to end, everyone says, oh, I could write a book. No, they couldn't. It's really hard. Yeah. So if you've done that, you're winning. But have realistic expectations. You'll get stuff wrong with the first draft, almost certainly. You'll need help. Do ask for help. Yeah. I would suggest don't ask your friends for help, because they don't. Well, for two reasons. One is they're either going to want to be genuinely, they'll be knocked out that you've written a book, and they'll be so impressed, and they'll just say, this is fantastic. Or they'll say it because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Yes. But either one is not a critical view, really. It's not an informed view. Other people feel a weight on them to be hypercritical. they'll pick up everything. They'll pick up every tiny thing, things that aren't wrong at all, because they feel that it's incumbent upon them to be hypercritical. Showing your friends isn't a great idea often. Writing groups are good for some people. If you're a joiner, writing groups are wonderful.
Yeah.
And people tend to find trusted readers. So find yourself readers whose opinion you trust, who've got no agenda, two or three, then you're laughing.
And Sal, in your position, so with the work you do, how many projects might you work on, or writers might you work with in a typical year, let's say?
So difficult to say. And this is one of the things I say on my website. I cannot tell you how soon I will be able to get to your book, because it is absolutely impossible to judge. I can get a book and it's not very big, and I think, oh, I'll race through this will be great. And it can take me, I average each book out at about 3 weeks. That's an average. From the beginning, like I said, sometimes I read them 2 or 3 times. I want to be sure of something. Sometimes I've got bogged down with an issue when I first read, so I then just want to read it, freely.
Yeah.
It can be much quicker than that. It has been longer than that.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. Very difficult.
So I'm just Tracy's just posted a question. Thanks, Tracy. Saying, outside of a group, where would you find a trusted reader, if not friends? That's an interesting question, Tracy.
It is a very good question. What you want is someone, well, either your partner is either going to be your perfect reader or the worst possible reader. If you get a partner who is gentle and has a sort of instinct for it, then that's the best possible person. But then you're asking an awful lot of them. You're constantly going to them and say. So what you want to do is find 2 or 3 people. It's very difficult for me to say how. And of course, you're quite right. If not friends, then who? But if you're showing to friends, you will notice that there's going to be 2 or 3 who stand out. Yeah. And they are the people that you want to, and buy them a bottle of wine occasionally, or a box of chocolates, because it's a big ask to ask people to critically read.
I should add at this point that we have a Facebook group. Many of you might already be part of it. And we have a lot of posts in there about asking for beta readers, for example, or beta readers.
Excellent idea, and I can't believe I forgot that. That's a very good way to do it. Yeah, that's a really
that's
good
fine.
Way to do it. Yeah.
And Sally, I was going to ask what we talked about how many projects you might work on in a year. What gives you that buzz? So when can you look at a project and think, oh yeah, okay, this has got a real feel to it, or what gives you that buzz, makes you excited about something you read?
When I'm surprised, or when the writing is just extremely good, or when I have been disappointed at the beginning and suddenly it takes off. But truthfully, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. If I think back, I can honestly think of 1 or 2. You see, I can think of them, maybe 4 books in my whole career that I haven't connected with and enjoyed, got into. There's always a point, there's always a place where you think, oh, I get it now, and you just you connect, and that sounds really cheesy, and it also sounds dubious, I know, but I am very lucky. I love my job, and it's very exciting for me. Starting a new book and watching it unfold is a very exciting process for me.
I can imagine, and then to have the situation. I know the situation with someone like Sarah, where you work on something and it goes on to become such a phenomenally successful book, but. Yeah, I
think I know what you were asking just now. So when do I, if I'm reading a book, when do I think this is going to be a blockbuster? I have had, the publishing industry has changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years. Books that would have been absolute certs 10 years ago get rejected now. I've had so many books over the last 10 years that I thought would be snapped up and haven't been, and are always rejected with the words, this is a wonderful book, I'm not going to take the risk on it. So it's hard for me to judge now.
Yeah.
The truth is, not all books are going to be even publishable. That is the truth. But to me, from my point of view, that doesn't matter. What I want to do is get a book that the writer can be proud of, can show their family and say, look, I did this, that their family will go, oh my God. That's what matters to me, to get a manuscript as good as it can possibly. Not that I don't understand everyone's desire to be published. Of course I do. And I will try and, aid that. But the simple truth is not all books are going to be published.
Yeah.
But we'll get it as good as we can get it.
Great. Sorry, another question actually, Sal, and this is great, some questions coming in, and we will move over to more questions in a minute, but this one really caught my eye. It's from Becky. She asked what genres and age of potential readers you most prefer.
Good question, Becky. I'm just realizing how wishy-washy I am for this kind of thing, because I have, the only thing I can't do is science fiction. I can do fantasy, but I can't do science fiction, and I can't do kids' books. But anything else I seem to feel comfortable in. Age doesn't matter. I just worked on a really great book with a woman who's 83. It was her first book. Really good book, which I hope finds a home somewhere. The youngest person I've had has been in their early 20s, and that was absolutely fine. So I don't have a preference. I think very, very occasionally I've had a book where I've said to the author, I think you need a male editor on this. And these are very sort of action-packed explosions, that kind of thing. Not that I can't, I'll give it a go, but sometimes I think this is very much a man's book. Hate to say that, generalization, there'll be women that will love it. So really no preference. I'll have a go at anything, unless it's science fiction, in which case I will be bewildered.
Yeah.
But if I look at a book and I realize I can't do it, I will tell you very quickly, and I will help you find someone who can do it.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. More questions are trickling in, so I think we'll just, there's a few others I want to pick up on here as well. Oh, you've frozen. Have I frozen?
Or have I frozen?
I don't think I've frozen, but I may have done. Let's see how
I can still hear you, Tom, so maybe Sally froze.
Oh, Sally, can you hear us? I think it's maybe your connection at your end.
Yeah, it looks like she might have frozen. So hopefully she'll be able to pop back on in a second.
Yeah, maybe she knew the question I was going to ask was going to be particularly difficult and stretching. Sally,
while we're waiting for her to pop back on, I've just dropped the link to the Facebook group into the chat. And in case you are on there, we have a couple of moderated questions, so you'll have to answer those, and then we'll be happy to approve you.
Yeah, I think someone actually, Hayley, thanks. Someone did come in and say there was a problem with it, but I think others seem to be joining it. So that does look
Carla.
good.
I think we got her in. But Carla, let us know if you still have an issue and we'll help.
Okay, fantastic. I'm hoping that Sally's going to rejoin us any second. Let's have a particular, right, while we, looks like she's had a meltdown with her system at her home office. So we'll see if we can reconnect over the next few minutes. If not, yeah, please everybody do look at her, do look at her Facebook page. So I've just seen a message from Jennifer. Sally's been my book doctor in 3 books. Oh, that's great to have you along, Jennifer. Okay, she's amazing. She truly is. So for those that I should explain that Sally and I worked together for a few years previous to me joining ProWritingAid. Sally and I were both involved in a training business that helped improve written communication. So we ran training courses for businesses to improve business communication. And that's where we got to know each other. We've been friends ever since. We live quite close to each other. And she is amazing. She's got a phenomenal sense of not only how a book works, how a story works, but also how a person works. So she's very good at making that connection, building that relationship, and doing everything she's just talked about. It doesn't help that, however, she still seems to be having technical issues. So I'm really sorry about this, guys. Let me just see if we can find out if she's sorted things out.
I've popped her website into the chat, so if while we're waiting to see if she can come back, if you guys want to take a look and see kind of what she does and how she works. Looks like she just popped off, so hopefully that means she can
hopefully she'll be back on. Yeah, and I should say actually, Sally, and I was going to come on to mention this, Sally is not only in fact, bear with me 2 seconds, Sally is phoning, so I'm just going to speak to her and put myself on mute for
Since we've been chatting about this since some people had asked in the chat about finding trusted readers, if you've been able to find trusted readers while we're waiting for Sally, maybe you can share some places that you've been able to find them, whether that's beta readers in a group or, you know, on Facebook in a Facebook group or somewhere else. Feel free to share those into the chat and I will read them out and review it. Oh, here's Tom.
Hi, Hayley, sorry about that. Okay, so we're really stepping up the technology here, and Sally is on a phone link with me now, so I'm hoping that you can all hear her. If not, do let me know, and we may just have to call it short, but she's going to carry on answering some questions. Sal, you missed the fact that Jennifer Munro had mentioned you've been her book doctor 3 books and said you're amazing. Obviously,
oh, thank you, Jenny.
You're obviously paying Jenny a lot of money.
I did.
And I did go on to mention, Sal, and maybe you can talk about this, that you're also an author yourself, and on the sallyoj.com website is your book, but it's quite an unusual book, right? It's not fiction. Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, I seem to be back, so let's see. I'll answer that, but let's see if I can join you for a minute anyway.
Okay.
So I grew up in a rather amazing place in the Sussex countryside called Bailiff's Court. It's terribly hard to describe. It's a medieval folly that was born in the 20s, but it's like a big medieval jigsaw puzzle. And it was my grandmother and grandfather started it as a hotel in the late 1940s, and it's the most beautiful, extraordinary building and the most beautiful, extraordinary place. And I used to think someone should write a book about, oh look, I'm back. Somebody should write a book about, right, I'll put the phone down.
Okay. Go for it, Sal.
Somebody should write a book about Bailiff's Court, I thought. And then I thought, oh, that's probably me then, because I lived there for the first 17 years of my life and I know all about it. But I thought I did. When I started researching it, it's just the most amazing place. The guy who built it wasn't even a fully trained architect. It's beautiful and sublime, and come and visit it if you're ever in Sussex.
So you're skirting around the important issue, which is tell us about some of the people who stayed there when you were growing up as a child.
Oh, I mean, literally everybody who was anybody stayed there in the 50s and 60s. It was sort of the place to go. So Charlie Chaplin, Betty Davis, Barbra Streisand. My mind's gone blank. I've got a whole page in the book. Any
history buffs out there, if you're ever over in the UK and want to see a bit of amazing Sussex architecture and history in action, must visit Bailiff's Court.
And it's just so beautiful as well.
Yeah.
Let me answer some author questions.
The book is on Sally's site. So let's have a quick look. Are there courses? So Rory asks, are there courses you can take to be a book doctor, or is it just a combo of both experience and learning? Also, do writers make better book doctors?
Excellent question. And I do have writing experience. I had no training. I left school with O-levels, so I left school at 16. I didn't go to university. once I'd been doing it with Sarah for 3 books, once I'd been doing it up to Fingersmith, which is dedicated to me, by the way, never lose a chance to say that.
That must be an amazing feeling.
It's fantastic. Nearly as good as almost having my name on a Massive Attack album, which didn't happen in the end, but anyway. No, much better than that. Once I started doing it, and what happened was Sarah actually started saying maybe you could do it for other people. And at that point, I thought, if I'm going to charge people money, I've got to sort of learn my trade, in as much as I can't just say this bit isn't working. I've got to say you've got a problem with telling rather than showing. I've got to learn how to say your rising action isn't working yet. Now, I hate filling my reports with jargon, and I try not to. I said to you once, the only thing I tend to use is dangling modifier, just because it makes me laugh. But but I will. My reports are divided into, you know, characterization, structure, show don't tell, you know, whatever, if those are issues. And I did learn. I did go out and learn. So I started with an ability which I then trained. So I feel I couldn't ask people for money unless I knew what I was. I did know what I was talking about before, but knew how to say it.
So really, from that, to answer Rora's question, I guess it came about from, you had the experience and the opportunity to work with Sarah, and that opened your eyes to what not only you were good at, had an inherent ability to do, but also something you really enjoyed, and then went away to do the learning to really to professionally get good at it.
But it was such fun, you know, because I was so, oh, that's what that's, you know, oh, that's what that is, that thing that people do. So, you know, it was a pleasure for me. It wasn't a hardship.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so
I do try not to be jargony, but yes, to learn how to be, most people do an English at university one way or another. They work then for publishing one way or another. That's the usual path. But I am here to say that you don't have to do that. But you certainly can't just set yourself up with no experience and no.
I guess, again, the kind of groups, beta reading and all those kind of things that you can expose yourself to are really going to help you understand whether you've got the passion and skills to make something more of it, right?
Absolutely. But it is all those things, but you have a duty of care to the author you work with, and you must know what you're doing, and you must know that you're good enough to do it, because otherwise you're not doing yourself a favor, but you're certainly not doing the author a favor. Now, you know, possibly, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name. Who asked the question?
I think it was Rory who asked the question.
Rory, you know, it might be right up your alley. It might be just exactly like me. You know, you might find you've got a real faculty for it, but you need to put a bit of free work in first. Basically, you need to work on a few books for free, get a sense of what you're doing, work out how you're going to write your report, work out what you're going to say. You know, these are things that you need to work on, or you can go the traditional way.
So a couple of interesting things. So there seems to be quite a few people who are asking if you work on horror novels. Got a few horror writers here, and also whether you take clients from the USA, which I'm assuming is.
Some of my very favourite clients are from the States. If Chandy, I doubt if Chandy is watching this at the moment, but because he's a very busy man at the moment, but. Some of my, I could reel off names, and all over the world. So yeah, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. Horror, and actually that's a very good question. Crime I can do, thrillers I can do. I love both of those genres. I've never actually had a horror story. The closest I've had is Sarah's The Little Stranger, and that actually gave me the screaming heebie-jeebies as I was working on that. As anyone who's, I'm not sure I'd be good at horror. And do you? Regretfully, I say, because it's a very specific genre, and I don't know the tropes, and I don't know in any genre fiction, the readers have a certain expectation, which isn't to say I wouldn't. I'm not sure. I would have to be certain I could do it, and right now I'm not certain I could do it, which is kind of a shame.
Going back to one of the questions, we kind of touched on this earlier, but you, do you require a finished manuscript? I think you said you were. Do you ever take on novels one chapter at a time? Is what Elizabeth's asking.
So I've got 3 ways of working. First of all, we can just have a phone call. You can just pay me for a phone call. That's not a problem. That can sort a lot out in a phone call. And I love that. I love doing that. I don't do 1 chapter at a time, but I will happily look at 3 chapters, because then you can really get a sense of what's going on. It doesn't have to be the first 3 chapters. I do like to see the first chapter of a book, because that's what agents will look at and make assumptions based on. But I'm very happy to look at 3 chapters. I'm very happy to have a phone call. That's the least I will take.
So 3 chapters gives you
you can get a pretty good idea from 3 chapters and a synopsis. So I never usually read a synopsis or questions from the author until I finish the book, because I don't want to be I don't want to know what's going to happen. So I read the synopsis at the end.
One of the things that amazes me, I'd really like to know about, is just how fast you read, because I consider myself quite a slow reader. I love reading, but I don't consider myself a fast reader. And, I remember thinking about Fingersmith, for example. It's a book I completely fell in love with. And when I found time to read it, I was voraciously reading it, but it still took me probably a good 10 days to read, in between the kids and schoolwork, work and everything else. But are you a particularly fast reader?
I've always been a very fast reader, and I've always been a very voracious reader, since I was really young. Often had 2 or 3 books on the go, but I must make it very clear that when I read for work, I do not skim read. I mean, that's one of the reasons it takes so long. I never, ever skim read. Sometimes if I go back for a 3rd read, then I'll skim read because I'm looking for something in particular, but I would never do that. It would be a waste of my time, and it would be certainly a complete disservice to the author. But I do read very quickly. But when I'm working on a manuscript, I often actually, especially if I only read it once on the first read, I will read very slowly, because I'm looking for completely different things. It's like walking into a 3D maze when I start reading a manuscript. So that can, it'll take me a lot longer to read a page than if I was reading a novel for pleasure.
I have to say, I'd love to, I know we're going to have to bring it to a close in the next few minutes. There's a couple more questions I'd love to get in, but I'd love to see see that moment your brain works where you're you're starting to uncover or identify the things that aren't working, and go, okay, actually, I know what's wrong here. I know what we can do to fix it. Do your real doctoring. That fascinates me. Absolutely,
that's really exciting. Yeah.
So, a couple of questions. We have got. Does Sally only work on novels? You do novellas and short story collections too? I'm assuming there is no, book doctor.
Yes. You see, the more questions you ask me, the more memoirs. Obviously, yes, I've done. I've done 2 with Viv Albertine that have been extremely successful, though I say so myself. I can do short stories. Is not a genre I enjoy reading very much, and so again, I have done short stories, and the author's been very happy, but I'm always a little anxious that I might be missing something, because it's not a genre I particularly enjoy reading. Sorry, what was the other thing? Short stories or novellas definitely, because it's the same. You're looking for the same structure. You're looking for a robust structure. You're looking for a good story arc. A good story plot. Something we haven't even discussed.
Well, no, I know, and in fact, there's so much we could get into here about story arcs, characterization. makes me think we should be doing some kind of monthly Ask the Doctor session.
I'd love to. Be absolutely up for that.
Where you can diagnose. And
I'll get a special white coat that I can wear.
Yes, exactly.
And a book.
And I think, yeah, Tracy agrees. She thinks, yes, that would be a good idea. Okay, fantastic.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and so bringing it to a close, I mean, any last thoughts? The sense I get is people are particularly interested in, the common issues or symptoms, the common problems. Any last kind of words?
The biggest one, and if we could hear everyone who's joining in today, we'd hear a very big groan now. The most common and hardest issue is what I've mentioned already several times, showing rather than telling, because it's a very difficult one to understand. Once you understand it, you can fix it. I'm good at explaining it now. Took me a long time. That's one of the most common ones. Characterization can be a problem, especially if you've been carrying a story around in your head for a long time, because they're so real to you, those characters. So they come onto the page, they fall onto the page as almost stick figures. But that's an easy fix. Usually that's not too much of a problem. That's telling me to cheer for the NHS. No, this is fun. I'm happy doing this.
Okay.
I'd say, and then pacing. So that is often a huge problem. So getting the story up right and getting the tension and the pacing right is often a big problem.
Well,
and writing too much.
I think we've got the subjects to our next one then, and I think we've got some people agreeing us about the explanation of the show. Don't tell. From Helen. So yeah, there's a lot there I think we need to expand on. Right, Sally, I really appreciate your time today. We are going to bring it to a close. As I said, at 8 p.m. in the UK, which is we're just approaching. At the moment, we all stand on our doorsteps and applaud the key workers and health workers and everyone else that's making such a valuable contribution. I just want to say, I'm sure this speaks for everyone, Sally, who's here today. Thank you ever so much for your time. Really, really interesting. I'd love to do something more and build on this session sometime soon. Guys, if you're attending today and have enjoyed it, I hope you have. Please keep checking back for other events we've got coming up in the next.
Can I just say something quickly, Tom? Sorry.
Yes.
Can I just say thank you to everyone who's joined today? I wish I could meet you all. It's been an absolute joy, and I look forward to perhaps more of these sessions. Sorry, Tom. Carry on.
No, that's great. No, very, very heartfelt. Thanks for that. No, I appreciate it. And and I hope everyone's felt they've got some value out of it. So from us at ProWritingAid to you guys, to Sally, have a great evening or a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.